All right, call the meeting to order. In accordance with the requirements of the New Jersey statutes regarding open public meetings, notice of this meeting was legally advertised in the Courier Post and South Jersey Times and posted in the bulletin board in the municipal building. Fire exits are located through the double doors on your left and right. Please silence all mobile devices. Please stand for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Here.
Mr. Longfellow? Here. Ms. Pasqualone?
Here.
Mr. Perry?
Here.
Mr. Fazio?
Here.
Mayor Gattinelli?
Here.
Mr. Platt?
I'm present.
And Mr. Gonter? Here. All are present, sir.
All right, first off, mayoral proclamation for Jason Hamilton Thorpe, Eagle Scout.
Yes, thank you. Jason, you come up. This is a proclamation for Eagle Scout Court of Honor. Whereas Washington Township, Gloucester County, New Jersey, takes great pride in the accomplishment of its youth in all activities and in recognizing young people who have aspired to excellence in the classroom, through the community, or in the field of scouting. And whereas the mayor and members of the Township of Washington Council wish to recognize Jason Hamilton Thorpe for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout, and whereas the first Eagle Scout rank was awarded in September 1912, and since more than 1.5 million Scouts have achieved the distinction, and whereas Jason Thorpe's scouting journey began as a Tiger Cub in Cub Scout Pack 381. He was then a member of the Garden State Council, Old Colony District, Boy Scout Troop 7057, and to earn the designation of Eagle Scout, the candidate must compete and pass rigid requirements that includes earning a total of 21 merit badges. And whereas in addition to the merit badges, Jason Thorpe was required to plan, develop, and build a service project benefiting the community. Jason Thorpe gathered materials, supplies, and built a ceremonial fire pit in Washington Lake Park. It is to be used by the Veterans Advisory Board of Washington Township, New Jersey, to properly dispose of retired American flags. He was deeply honored to build the ceremonial pit to honor veterans, and as his grandfather and two great-uncles were veterans of World War II. Along with scouting, Jason Thorpe is a cadet in the Washington Township High School Air Force Junior ROTC and drill team. He is a member of the command staff and was a commander of the drill team. He has received the Air Force Association Award, one of the highest awards given in the Air Force Junior ROTC. He is a member of the National Honor Society and was awarded a Washington Township High School People's Choice Award. In June 2016, he was a delegate to the New Jersey Boys State held at Rider University. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the mayor and members of the Township of Washington Council, Gloucester County, New Jersey, that Jason Hamilton Thorpe be recognized and congratulated for achieving the rank of Eagle Scout. Be it further resolved that I, the mayor, and members of the Township of Washington Council do hereby declare this proclamation to be an official document authorized by the mayor and the Township Council and presented to Jason Hamilton Thorpe on this, the 12th day of April 2017.
Council is going to enter into executive session. This is for discussion with our legal counsel, Capehart and Scatcherd, to resolve an issue that was left over from the last year and prior administrations. So, do we have a motion on resolution authorizing the executive session?
I'll make that motion.
By the way, that's Adamazzi versus Township of Washington. We expect to be there no later than 30 minutes.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have to do a roll call here?
Do.
Yes.
Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Okay, we're going to retire to the flag room at this time.
All right, do we have a motion to return to the public meeting?
Make that motion?
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. All right, moving on to the bill list. Do we have a motion to approve the bill list?
Make that motion?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Minutes, these are regular meeting minutes from March 22nd, 2017. Do we have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
I'll recuse. I missed half the meeting.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Recused was not here. And approval of the executive session meeting minutes from March 22nd, 2017. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion?
Second.
Anyone?
Second.
Any discussion on the executive session? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Recuse.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Recused.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
All right, this is going to be a mayoral budget address. This is a presentation to council. The mayor is addressing the public regarding her budget, and it will then be presented to council for review. So, Mayor Gattinelli.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. I am pleased to present the 2017 annual operating and capital budget. A substantial amount of work has gone into the preparation of these budgets, including extensive meetings with each and every department head, budget workshops with the public, and open public budget hearings. We scheduled 7 small group budget workshops, 2 of which were during the evenings, and we still have 3 additional meetings scheduled for the adoption of the budget. We held our open public budget hearings last week on Tuesday, April 4th and Thursday, April 6th, which each department had to discuss in detail their allocations as it relates to their department's budget. I'm happy to announce that the annual operating budget for 2017 proposes no municipal tax increase without any reduction in municipal services. In fact, municipal services are being enhanced in order to improve the quality of life that Washington Township residents expect and deserve. The 2017 capital budget includes the continuation of the roads program, funding to make improvements to the police administration building, 12 new fully outfitted police vehicles, and new software to replace outdated and obsolete software for the zoning and construction departments. In terms of the surplus for 2016, the beginning balance was $4.8 million. Last year, the township used $2.3 million, which reduced surplus down to $2.5 million. The result of 2016 municipal operations ended in a $3.7 million increase in surplus, which then made $6.2 million of surplus available for 2017. 2017 budget will utilize approximately $2 million of surplus, bringing the ending balance to $4.1 million. This surplus meets the criteria of our informal surplus policy of between 10 and 15% of the operating budget. Also, based on the informal surplus policy, the $2.1 million in surplus used will be reinstated in 2016 from 2016 reserves of $1.8 million plus projected revenues surplus. Total appropriations for 2017 increased by 1.18%, below the cost of living increase. The appropriations within caps increased 3.92%, while appropriations excluded from caps decreased. Statutory expenditures, which are non-discretionary, such as health insurance and pension costs, increased by 3.4%. As I mentioned to you during my previous update, we have enhanced municipal services, including the implementation of Human Resources Department, increased IT and cybersecurity, Shop Washington Township program, and others. We have also restructured the police hierarchy by eliminating higher paid officers through retirement and replacing them with 6 new officers. The 10.09 decrease in appropriations excluded from the cap are a result of decreases in expenditures related to capital down payments and grant funding, which was recorded throughout 2016, alleviating the need to include it in the 2017 budget. 2017 projected non-tax budgeted revenues will increase by approximately $450,000 over the last year. Most of this increase is attributed to local revenues increasing, which include fees associated with abandoned properties and construction code fees, permit fees associated with new development, which increased by 11.1%. I also referenced other upcoming projects and additional cost savings during my last presentation, including RFPs for banking services, a brand-new fleet management program, and healthcare savings initiatives. Due to the modest increase in appropriations and the expected increase in revenues due to redevelopment and economic development in the township, the introduction of the 2017 municipal budget allows for the township to keep the 2017 tax rate equal to last year's municipal rate of 0.6573%. Thank you to the residents of Washington Township for your continuous support and patience as we put extensive time and effort into keeping taxes stable while still increasing services offered to our residents. Our first priority is to work in the best interest of the residents who make up our community. My commitment to the residents is to continue moving the township forward and to do everything in our power to create the quality of life that our residents want and deserve. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Moving on to Resolution 117. This is a resolution to introduce the 2017 municipal budget. And I'll go into some further detail. This budget introduction, this is solely a budget introduction. Council has 28 days to review, and so does the public. On May 10th, 2017, we will have a public session regarding the budget. It is too early at this point to go into details. I just received it today, so, I'm looking forward to getting into it. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Roll call? I'm sorry, any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Passes.
And council, go to Resolution 117. This is a resolution to introduce the 2017, oh, this is the same page,
That
isn't
just
it?
happened.
I'm sorry.
Yes, sir.
We just did this. Resolution 118 is a resolution awarding a contract to South State, Inc. in the amount of $800,600, oh man, this is going to be a long night. $861,671.75 for Washington Township 2016 Road Program, Phase 2. This is a continuation of an investment in township infrastructure and our road system. Do I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Abstain. Resolution 119, this is a resolution awarding a contract to South State, Inc. in the amount of $131,428.30 for NJ Dot construction of Stagecoach Road. This money has been secured from New Jersey Department of Transportation, State of New Jersey, to continue improvements on our roadways in Washington Township. Do you have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Abstain.
Motion passes.
Resolution 120. This is a resolution awarding a contract to R. Moslick Excavating, Inc. in the amount of $87,118 for Lake Avenue erosion and stabilization. This is resolving a long-time problem to stop becoming a major problem, which could be very costly. Can you go into further detail a little bit, or do we need Nina to answer that?
I think we would need a Nina
Yeah.
and her expertise.
Okay.
But she's available as she sent the email anytime.
Yeah, she's not available tonight. Hopefully at the next meeting, if this comes up again, we can go into further detail about it if anyone has any questions. Do you have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
I'm going to abstain to that. Resolution 121. This is a resolution approving release of a cash bond for One Atlas Court. This is an ongoing process resolving longtime escrow payments, which should have been released some time ago. Do you have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second? Anyone? I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 122 is a resolution awarding a contract for banking service for the Washington Township. This resolution is a result of increasing fees from our present bank. As a result of the process, we will be able to save money, which would have been in costs if we stayed in the present bank. Do we have a motion?
Mr. Fauci just indicate that the award would be going to Republic Bank. And I just wanted, from the administration standpoint, thank Robin and Colette for doing a great job on the RFP process and evaluating everything for council. Just want to thank Robin and Colette for doing a great job through the RFP process and for analyzing everything which is attached in the resolution. Thank you for all your help.
Do we have a motion yet?
No, we do not.
Make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes. Republic Bank.
Resolution 123 is a resolution designating depository for municipal funds. This is a process mandated by law. Do we have a motion?
Just need to name the bank that we're,
You know what? It wasn't on here. That's why. I'm not-
Republic.
It's Republic Bank again also.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 124 is a resolution awarding a contract for lease of property owned by the Township of Washington, known as 339 Salina Road, Sewell, New Jersey, Block 20, Lot 3. This is for lease of property we own through open space and allows us to recoup funds back into open space for use of property for farming. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 125 is a resolution authorizing Township of Washington to solicit bids for lawn services. Any discussion? I'm sorry, motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 126, a resolution awarding a contract for FY 2016 NJ Dot Trust Fund reconstruction of Bethel Mill Road. This is money we have secured through New Jersey Department of Transportation, State of New Jersey, to continue improvement in our roadways in Washington Township. It is a result of efforts by our engineer, Remington and Vernick, applying for a grant for us. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. I'm sorry, I need to abstain from that.
Motion passes.
Resolution 128, resolution authorizing entry into a settlement agreement in litigation involving Timothy Atanasi versus Township of Washington. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 129.
That will be tabled, Mr. President. We're going to table that resolution and pull it.
Okay.
We got a motion to table, please?
Make that motion.
I'll
Table.
second. Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. Resolution 130, this is a resolution pertaining to public portion at Washington Township Council meetings. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Second.
We're at 130, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Well, is there something?
We're at discussion now.
129 was tabled, okay.
Discussion.
We skipped
Yeah.
the beat here, sorry. We're trying to keep up with you. Sorry, Nick.
Sorry.
We're at discussion. Mr. President.
Personally, I'm not too in favor of this. I feel like we're going to do it, and it's just not going to enforce it. I like the discussion we have with residents, to be honest with you. I mean,
Yeah, I like the civil discussion.
Yeah, I see your point. I think the last couple meetings were a little rougher than we've had in the past, but I don't know, I feel like we passed this, we're going to enforce it for a couple meetings and then fall away from it. And it's just like, because then we're going to get the meetings where we get to have that discussion a little bit. So, I mean, if we pass this and we break it, is it like detrimental or it doesn't really
Is it
matter?
detrimental if you break it?
Yeah.
No, nobody goes to jail for it, but it's a policy that you try to enforce, but you be flexible depending upon the circumstances. But the general guidelines are there for these council meetings as well as for the public portion on ordinances when they're up for adoption as well.
I think it has some good points in it. I'm not in favor of everything. I think the one thing I don't necessarily like is that it forces people that when we open up on an ordinance, right, I think that it's fair that they only have one opportunity to come up to the public. So, but when we go to open session at the end of the meeting, let's say you get the case where somebody has two things, they want to talk about it and they want to use the full 5 minutes for both things. So, I mean, at that point, we're going to have that meeting where we're not going to say no to the person because there might only be 10 people here. So, I think the way to look at it is we can use it when it's needed, but we're not always going to need it. I think that's fair to say. Everyone would agree to that, right?
But we might always need it too.
There is that possibility, but
I have a couple comments. So I'm just reading through this, and while I agree with most of the points, I have a couple comments on all of them, or on 3 of them. So one, where it states, all members of public attending township council meetings must treat each other, the mayor, council, and township employees with respect. I think it should go, I just want it to be clear that it goes all 3 ways. Us, the public, showing respect, the public showing us respect, and also everybody up on this dais should treat each other with respect and professionalism. So I think that should be stated clearly. My second point is for where it states public persons making a public
What
comment.
number you on?
That was number 1, now I'm on number 6.
6? Okay.
Persons making public comment may not yield their time to another speaker, and each individual is limited to speaking once during a particular public comment period for a period of time not to exceed 5 minutes. I just want to be clear, so if there's multiple resolutions, that person can come up more than once and speak the 5 minutes. So it's not that they're limited to resolutions or ordinances.
We don't have public comment on resolutions.
Well, ordinances and public comment at the end.
Okay.
The goal of the rule is that a person can come up and speak to each ordinance. So this would apply to each public hearing on an ordinance. It would apply to the public comment period that we have at the end of each meeting. And there are times, for instance, like a budget resolution, there's a hearing on the budget, that would also apply in that case. So it would apply to each particular public portion.
I'm not sure if I feel that it should be limited to one time. I know that it has to be concise, and I don't think somebody should be able to come up here multiple times with the same point. But I think if they, throughout the public session, if they, have another idea or thought, I feel like they should be able to express that.
And you do understand that there's other ways to express points and thoughts other than at a public meeting?
Right. But I think it should be open to the public so everybody has an opportunity, equal opportunity. Also, number 8, the township solicitor shall be the parliamentarian. So
I was not going to add an extra charge for that, so I was just going to do it the same.
What do you exactly mean by this? Like, could you clarify? Like, I want to understand what your role would be in this.
My role would be to give advice to the chair and anybody that requests it in terms of Robert's Rules of Order, the it's basically giving legal advice on the conduct of the meeting. Legal advice, not telling what to do, give you legal advice and recommendations. It's up to the chair, it's up to the council to make that decision.
If it's asked by a council member or administration, correct?
Well, if it's asked, there are some times when spontaneously, if I think it's appropriate to protect the township and to protect council, I might offer an opinion on parliamentary procedure as well.
Okay, well, before I vote on this, I suggest we change the items that I expressed, especially the first one, to make sure that everybody shows respect. And then number 6, I also think we should change that to reflect that somebody can come up multiple times for the resolution. However, it has to be a different point. And once those revisions are made, I will vote accordingly. So can I make a motion to table this until next meeting, until the changes are made?
Well, there's a motion on the floor, there's discussion. Now, if there's a motion to table, that would cut off the motion, but you'd have to get a majority vote.
Okay, I'll make that motion to table until next meeting, until those revisions are changed or made.
I'll second.
No discussion on the motion table, we need a roll call.
Roll
Mr.
call.
Clerk.
Ms. Donato,
This is a roll call.
roll call, this is a roll call to table this resolution to another date.
Till the next meeting. Yeah.
Mr. Longfellow?
No.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion to table fails. 3-2.
At this point, Mr. Fazio, unless there's no further discussion on the pending motion to approve Resolution 131, unless somebody wants to make an amendment based upon some of the comments, otherwise the motion would be as is based upon the resolution that's been laid out on the table before you.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of, how would you word that in line 6, if you were to motion to amend, that it would be up to our decision to give somebody another chance to come up here and talk. Like,
To give the option.
let's say, they want to come up again and talk about something else. If they come up to the podium, ask if hey, I want to talk about this next, is that okay? We can kind of, all in favor, say aye.
I think we run the risk of treating others differently. So we say yes to this guy, we say no to that guy, then we're not treating everybody the same way. And I think that's very important when it comes to this kind of thing, that everybody's treated the same way. And I think that's exactly what we're trying to spell out in here and set some kind of guideline that's reasonable. I think 5 minutes, especially if we follow it the way we're going, the way it's put in here, to not make comments until the end. They make their points. 5 minutes is a lot of time to make a point, and we respond at the end of the public comment portion to whatever's brought up. I think it's reasonable.
To your point, then, number 1 should be changed to include everybody so it's equal as well.
It says it. It says
It says all members of the public.
Let's treat each other.
All members of the public attending council meetings. So we can technically be part of the public meeting as well.
I mean, if you
I
have an
just wanted to
amendment for
spell it
one,
out.
I'd be more than happy to see how you'd like it written. All members of the public attending
By the way,
township
that
council
particular
meeting.
provision that was taken directly out of the public decorum resolution that was adopted at reorganization. It's no different than what was adopted by unanimous vote on January 2nd. But if you want to clarify it, that the respect goes both ways. I think it's implied. Certainly, I think it says it there. But
Dana,
however you want to do
I
it.
guess,
If I can,
yeah.
real quick, all members attending, so just cross out of the public. all members attending township council meetings.
Yes.
All right, so I make a motion to amend number 1 to remove of the public.
So you're amending your motion to adopt Resolution 131 with that one change?
Yes.
And wait, can we also add all members?
Well, how about, that's my motion, so I need a second on
Second.
that first. I'm not trying to be a stickler, that's just how Robert's rules is supposed to work. So let's take it one step at a
I have a
time.
There is a
motion.
motion on the table to amend item number 1 by Councilman Longfellow, second by Donato.
Any discussion on that amendment? Roll call?
Roll call vote. Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
I mean, I don't understand why you voted no, you just said that's what you wanted.
I said I wanted to change
The
it a little
motion
bit more.
passes 4 to
It's
1.
passed.
I understand that, but we can do that one separately. I'm trying to take this one step at a time instead of trying to do everything at once, because I might not agree with something down the road that you're trying to propose. Do you understand?
Right, I just wanted it worded differently.
Okay.
Mr. President, are there further amendments, or are we moving a motion?
Does anyone have any further amendments?
Number 6. I want to amend it to say that, persons may be public, is not limited to speaking once, or change it to, can speak on more than one topic, but it can't be repetitive.
Well, that was the same thing like what we just talked about. Like, you know, I tried to say, how would you word that? But the problem comes up that, you know, let's say person A comes up and we say no to him, and then person B comes up and we say yes to him, then we're showing favoritism to that particular person. So that's where we run into that problem. I think it's going to come down to somebody's going to want to come up, and it's just going to happen at one point, and it's not going to be that big of a deal. But, you know, it can't be that we make the decision on who comes up. It's got to be, you know, if they're making a good point, we'll probably let them speak. If they're not, then, you know, they got to sit down.
Are you moving an amendment, ma'am?
What I stated, yes, I would like to amend to that.
You're making a motion to amend number
Yes.
6?
Yes, to
And
reflect,
it's to do what exactly again?
for it to not be limited, and you can come up more than once, but it can't be a repetitive topic or discussion point.
So that's to be, not to be limited to the number of times a person may speak?
Right. They're allowed to speak on a specific resolution, but it can't be the same opinion they already expressed previously. It has to be a new topic or point.
On a new topic for discussion. I have a motion to amend number 6, specifically not to be limited to the number of times a person may speak on a new topic for discussion. Is there a second?
Second, or,
I'll
Oh,
There was a
second.
motion.
yes, I made the motion.
I have a first and a second. Mr. President, any further discussion?
I don't see any. Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
I'm voting no because that kind of contradicts what number 5 says along with number 6, so no.
Mr. Longfellow?
No.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
No.
Mr. Fazio?
No.
The motion fails 4 to 1 for the
Nice.
amendment. Are there any further amendments, Mr. President?
Anybody else? Amendments? Seeing none? All right, motion to approve.
We've already had a motion and a second
Roll
already
call.
still pending?
Roll call.
With the amendment to item number 1,
With
correct?
the amendment to item number 1, I think it reads all members attending, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
No.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
No.
Motion passes 3 to 2.
Mr. Sullivan, is there a 131 for the open space?
Yes,
is.
yes, there is a 131. I do have it, I just don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
If you can give me 3 minutes so I can walk to my office and get it. I will distribute it if we can ask for a brief recess at some point.
I could read it,
Or yes.
if you want me to read it verbatim into the record. Would you want me to read that?
We would have to amend the agenda to add 131 because
you
it's
wanna
not
do
on
that.
the agenda.
Correct.
I'll make a motion to amend the agenda for item 131.
Okay, second.
Any discussion?
And just to clarify, this isn't, can you just
Well,
read
first,
the
we're
title?
gonna, let's have a vote on the motion to amend the agenda.
All right.
Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
All right, Resolution 131, 2017 is a resolution authorizing the Open Space Advisory Board of Washington Township to enter into an agreement with the Land Conservancy of the State of New Jersey to update the open space and recreation plan for Washington Township. It is a cost not to exceed $19,000. Essentially, it's your ROSI list, your open space and recreation list, and it gets updated every so often. And it was first completed in 2001, and we're going for the certification program. So there is a financial appropriation attached to it. It's $19,000.
And that money comes from open space funds.
It comes from the open space tax, yes.
It was also bid out. So I'll make a motion.
I'll second. Any discussion? See none? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. All right, that's it for resolutions, right? No?
Yes, sir.
ones? All right. Ordinance 5. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 179 of the Code of the Township of Washington entitled Property Maintenance and Housing Standards. This was recommended by the construction official and is just utilizing the international code that is utilized by construction departments as the state has failed to adopt one at this time. This ordinance was tabled on 3/22/2017 for publication. This is a motion. We need a motion to remove it from table. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion. Okay.
I'll second.
Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. All right, ordinance is now up for adoption. Do we have a motion to adopt?
No, we have to have
Open the
public hearing
public
on that.
hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ordinance is, do we have a motion to open the public?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, we're now open to the public on ordinance, what the hell's the number? 05. Please keep your comments towards this ordinance.
Bob Alvarez, Henley Development, Sewell, New Jersey. Since we don't have a copy in front of us, we didn't get copies in the package that was sent. In fact, on none of the ordinances, I'm just going to go by memory. I believe that this ordinance should be passed. The state has not done their job in instituting a proper and easily acceptable maintenance standard for townships. This is the best possible way to give direction to the people and that are instructed in order to help the township clean up. In this, the property maintenance and housing standard, what I'd like to speak about is something that I don't know if it's been made available to the mayor and to council. After reading the entire paragraph, the entire chapter, I found a couple of interesting topics. One is record keeping and reporting. One of the major problems in this city that is festering is more and more not vacant buildings, but buildings in complete disrepair that should be addressed and either torn down or something should be done. In the chapter, there's a chapter 179-91, record keeping and reporting. And I quote, "The zoning officer shall provide a report to the mayor and council of Township of Washington every 6 months with respect to the number and location of properties on abandoned property list, the status of those properties and any actions taken by the municipality or by any qualified rehabilitation entity designated pursuant to the authority granted the zoning officer with respect to any property on the list or any other abandoned property within the Township of Washington. I don't know if the council and the mayor have gotten that report. I have not tried to Oprah it. I think that that report is a valid and should be discussed, and we should be taking a very serious look at all these properties. The report starting base should be 2017. We didn't have a full-time zoning officer last year. It was part-time. This may have been missed. And if I can ask a question, has this report been placed on the council and mayor's desk?
We'll answer your question after the public portion of the ordinance.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, looks like it.
Good evening, members of council, Mayor Daniel Coughlin, River Birch Road, Turnersville.
Could you stand a little closer to the mic, sir? Just,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Can you hear me? So this ordinance is just establishing some basic property maintenance standards for all properties in the town, vacant properties, occupied properties, what?
The state was supposed to adopt, may I address-
Leo,
may I address-
we respond at the end of the public comment portion. We're taking now your questions.
Okay, so you're going to explain this ordinance in detail. But what if I have a question about the question I just asked?
That's how we do it. We'll answer your
I mean,
question.
if the answer was just occupied properties, I may have a different question now.
I understand
than if
that,
you
sir.
said Vacant properties.
I understand that.
So
Well-
that's sort of, I need to have some clarification on that. I mean, we're just going to come up here and talk like parrots, or what? Okay, all right, so that's my first question. So, because they're two totally different situations. If you're talking about new regulations on occupied properties, and I'm not saying it's not proper, I'm just saying that that's a different, I think, discussion than vacant properties. I think this town already has the authority to clean up vacant properties and charge that to that homeowner, as eventually as a lien against the property. We have to do that. We have to do some basic property maintenance on vacant properties, because that is bringing down the neighborhood. And it was my understanding there's always been zoning and health regulations that already exist to help, the town keep track of and have people keep their properties up to a certain standard. But I just wanted to point out that those two situations, though, are different and maybe need a different discussion, possibly a different ordinance. So that's why I was curious to know what the answer was to that. There's a lot of vacant properties in the town. As you well know, some of them are getting, really disrepair, starting to bring down the quality of life in that neighborhood, and we have to do something, just to basically keep them up. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public?
Probably.
All right, motion to close the public?
Make that motion?
You have a second? So I'll second. Roll call, or all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes.
So I'll try to answer Mr. Alvarez's question first, that indeed there is a record-keeping provision in the code that is not being amended by this, and I will, either myself or our business administrator will contact the construction official and see when the last such report was, if one was issued by the previous zoning officer at any time in the last several years, and certainly the new zoning officer will be responsible to make a report on abandoned and vacant properties. As to the other gentleman's question, sir, I didn't get your last name. What's the second gentleman's question? The last name?
Coughlin.
Yeah. As to his question, this has been a hole in the township's ordinance for a period of time. The construction official requested that this be added to the overall housing code that we have in the township. As the council president indicated when he read the intro to the ordinance, this is an adoption of the International Property Maintenance Code for all properties in the township. There are additional regulations for abandoned and vacant properties as well. There's different sections for that, but these are basic standards for all properties in the township that have to be in. These are housing standards for housing stock in the township. The state never did adopt a uniform construction code in that fashion, so it was left upon the township to adopt its own. So it does apply to all properties, and for abandoned and vacant properties, there's additional regulations that apply as well.
I think we answered all the questions. All right, do we have a motion to introduce this ordinance?
Make that motion.
No, this is a motion
Oh,
to
I'm sorry,
adopt,
motion to
Mr.
adopt.
President.
I'll make the motion.
Second. Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes. All right, Resolution 8, Ordinance 8. This is an ordinance not to exceed the municipal budget appropriation limits and to establish a cap bank.
What happened to 6?
Did I skip a page?
Yes, sir.
It's 6.
I'm
and
sorry.
7.
That's why I was off. All right, I'm sorry, Ordinance 6. This is an ordinance amending Section 26025 of the Code of Washington Township entitled Stop Intersections. This is a motion to introduce. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
For the record, the hearing and potential final adoption on this ordinance will take place on May 10th, 2017.
And Ordinance 7. This is providing of various capital improvements and related expenses in the township for, let me read it off the actual thing. Some of that's wrong. Ordinance 7, I'm messed up tonight, I tell you what. Ordinance of the Township of Washington and County of Gloucester, New Jersey, providing various capital improvements and related expenses in and for the township, appropriating $5,828,900, therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $5,537,445 in the general improvement bonds or notes in the township finance the same. I feel like that's written incorrectly.
It's notes of the township to finance the same.
I read it wrong. Do we have a motion?
This is for introduction only at this time.
Introduction only.
Make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
This passes, and the adoption shall occur on May 10th, 2017.
Well, at least the hearing will.
The hearing and adoption, I'm sorry. Now 8, sir.
Yeah. What was it, 7? I probably lost the page again. Hang on. There it is. Ordinance 8, this is an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limit and to establish a cap bank. This was requested by the CFO. Do we have a motion to introduce?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call?
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Abstain. I would like to get more information.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Again, this will be a public hearing on May 10th for also the public hearing and a possible adoption.
And moving on to old business, we'll start with Sean and work our way down.
So the only old business I have is the discussion that we'd had a few meetings ago. You make the last one, and I was late. But as far as the hiring process, I told people I would keep it in the old business, we would carry it. I've started to do some research on some other municipalities and some other policies, and I'd like to just look forward to working with you on that, and we'll set up a meeting in the near future. I know the budget's probably going to take up a significant amount of our time in the next month or so, so look to get it done sometime in the early summer.
All right, I'm fine with that.
All right.
Yeah, it works.
No old business at this time.
No old business.
I have none. Angela?
No.
I'll just go to you guys after we do new business and reports. I'll just throw it to you guys if you do want to say something at a meeting at the end. Are you all right with that? Yeah? Okay. You don't have to. I'm just saying, you know. New business, Sean?
Nothing at this time.
None.
Nothing.
I have something. The Historic Committee, they're doing a cleanup day on April 22nd at 9 a.m. So if you are interested, email me, or you can email Nick Appice. I think his email is listed on the website. I know mine is. We need as many volunteers as we can get. You know, the more the merrier. Please help out. He's getting ready for the car show. So thank
Nick,
you.
what day
So the
would-
22nd?
Yeah, the April 22nd at 9 a.m. is the cleanup day
And that's where?
at Old Stonehouse Village.
Same time as the softball parade, too.
Yeah,
Is it?
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
I mean, maybe I'll try and swing by after.
it doesn't matter. Yeah, I mean, anybody, a couple people will help. It's a small site, so it's easy to clean up and get there. Angela?
No new business.
And reports.
We're going through Earth Day right now. There's been a lot of activities. Those activities are listed. I've kind of beaten them to death over the last couple of meetings. If you're interested in any of the upcoming events, they can all be found online. And just in addition, it was in the paper and a few other things you may have seen. Our community garden has been opened, and they're going to get ready to plant that. It's pretty much sold out at this point, and we're looking forward to another great year of that. So that's my report for today.
Okay, I have a long one. So for the Sports Advisory Board Soccer, it's the 14th annual Washington Township Easter Classic this weekend. This is a big event with 200 teams participating, 2 of which are from Argentina. As part of the tournament, the soccer program will be doing a food drive to support Mother's Cupboard. Collection barrels will be located at each site. The soccer program has partnered with Nikki Kaleni Foundation and the National PAD during their event this weekend to bring awareness to distracted driving. As part of the soccer tournament, the Philadelphia Union, Musselman's Applesauce, and Venturia Motorsports will be at the Washington Township Amphitheater Saturday morning through 1 p.m. And there will be player appearances from the Union along with NASCAR driver from the motorsports team. For softball, there's an opening day ceremony for softball Saturday, April 22nd at 8 a.m. At the softball field location number 9 in the Washington Lake Park. There will be a parade and speakers. For lacrosse, in May, they're planning on having a Brewster's Ice Cream Night. I will provide more details as I receive them. For the Board of Education, 3 presentations took place at the last Board of Education meeting. Thomas Jefferson, principal and kindergarten staff, introduced the new kindergarten program. The hoagie sale presentation, the town raised over $53,000 for 18 community members in need. Ed Camp Workshop is being hosted at the high school on 5/13 for educators, Board of Education members, and administration. Adoption of the school budget is scheduled for April 26th at 7 p.m. For economic development, next meeting is set for May 3rd at 6 p.m. here. We're working online to get a township directory for all current businesses. And I'm working on an RFP for the Economic Development Board to hire a company to conduct an analysis of our current economics, come up with a plan of action to attract new businesses to Washington Township, and this will also include advertising. That's it.
Nothing to report.
The 9th annual car show is at the Old Stonehouse Village. It's right on Egg Harbor Road. It's Saturday, April 29th, 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. There's going to be music, baskets, all kinds of stuff, and a lot of classic cars. So if you're interested in going, please attend. Angela?
Just that on Saturday, I was able to do a ride-along with Officer Freitag for the Distracted Driving Grant for April's National Distracted Driving Awareness Month. And I rode with Officer Freitag from 1 to 3, and within that short period of time, we ticketed 11 drivers that were using their cell phone, whether it was up to their ear or it was texting. So the grant is going very, very well. Just a reminder to everyone now that it's springtime, and especially during April, Distracted Driving Awareness Month, keep your eyes on the road. There's children out playing, and sports are, out, so balls are flying into the middle of the roads and kids are running after them. And if you take your eyes off the road for just 1 second, you just never know. So just please keep your eyes on the road. With that, this Saturday, April 15th, as Dana had mentioned, People Against Distracted Driving is having their I think, it's their 5-year anniversary, but it is their walk at Washington Lake Park, Saturday, April 15th, 2017, at 9 a.m. You can register at pad.org. Adults are $20, and 13 and under is free. So for more information, you can visit pad.org. And just to enjoy the holidays and your warm weather. That's all.
Pat, did you want to present something on distracted driving? No? Okay. Just making sure. just throwing you under the bus, man. All right, we'll move on to administration if you guys want to add any comments.
I don't have anything at this time. Thank you, though.
Okay, and public participation. Everybody's got 5 minutes. You can come up, talk about anything. You're only allowed up once. We're going to enforce it this meeting. But if you went up at the ordinance, you can come up for public. So you can still come back up if you already went up for the ordinance. It's separate things. Do we have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
We're now open to the public.
Evening, Bob Abbott, Chair of the Veterans Advisory Board for Washington Township. Just like to make 2 comments to council and the mayor. Number 1, Mayor, thank you and council for presenting the proclamation for Jason Thorpe. It means a lot to the veterans. It means a lot to the township because he's one of the gentlemen, in addition to 2 others, who have worked on veteran sites here in town, and it saves the town a lot of money and gets a lot of things done for us that we sincerely appreciate. So we thank you for that. Secondly, I'd like to thank the mayor because this past week she put up 3 signs for combat veterans, one here at the municipal building, one at the police station, and one at the park. And it recognizes those gentlemen or ladies who have given a little more than was necessary during combat. And we thank you for it because it gets them a place to park up close rather than having to walk, which some of them can't do anyway. But thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you, Bob.
My name is Jerry Keir. I live in the Whitman Square development. I've got 2 questions. One, where do we stand about the petition for the salary ordinance? Has there been a determination made if it will be on the November ballot?
We'll answer your questions after the public portion is over, sir.
On the paving of Stagecoach Road, what is the start date and what are the limits of the repaving? That'll be answered later.
Correct.
Bob Alvarez, Henley Development. Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate you giving us the update on the budget. There's going to be a lot of questions, I believe, that are going to come through. I've done an inventory of the Township of Washington, just for my own edification, and it is coming from the Gloucester County website. My interest is where is the township going size-wise versus past history, and I've done a lot of history research that I know that the mayor knows concerning economic development. What I've found is that there are 592 vacant land properties, 16,139 residential properties, 19 farms with a house, 843 commercial properties, which are extremely interesting in the economic development field, 11 industrial sites, 8 apartments, 17 railroad class 1, 6 railroad class 2, 1 telephone, public school properties 17, other school properties 6. There are public properties that are owned either by the township, the state, or the county, 346, 61 churches, 2 cemeteries, and 140 exempt properties, which was kind of interesting to me, especially since that's what is going to generate most of the revenue that supports both the township and the largest portion going to the Board of Education and the schools. Just wanted to do an inventory. In regard to the budget, the explanation of line item approvals by council, it would be good for us to know how the council is going to approach that, and if they're going to go item by item on the budget, are they going to be able to vote on each of the lines, or is it just going to be taken as a general budget in total? The timeline normally, according to what I have read, is the budget should be produced by February 10th, except it's by March 20th. A lot of townships do that, but we understand there's a new administration and there was a delay in the design. You're shaking your head, but you'll answer, I'm sure. I'd like to know the definition of CAP, C-A-P. I don't think most people understand that. If it's just contracting and procurement, or is it a cap placed on how much the budget can be, but how we define it. I'd like to find out how we define that. In regards to the ordinance concerning the establishment of a cap bank, I guess we're going to have to do a little bit more research because I don't have a copy of it, but I guess we'll see that online fairly soon to understand that. I did talk to the CFO prior to the meeting. He said we have done that in the past, and it's just a continuation of what we have done in the past. I'm disappointed by the resolution 130-2017. I believe that there should be a second opportunity to speak in rebuttal, if at all possible, for the public to come back and to either defend or give a new idea on a specific subject. Finally, Resolution R-127-2017 and R-128-2017 concerning another lawsuit in the township. Some things have been brought up in the past concerning civil service. Civil service could be a good thing for Washington Township. I know other people have come up here and talked about this, but I've done the research on it. It is necessary for a township, in order to do civil service, that you have to opt in and you cannot opt out. And that's probably the one reason that people do not do civil service. It is necessary for the mayor or the business manager to ask for the information for inclusion, or council can write a resolution to pursue it if it's so desired. My opinion, the protection, especially in the police department, of having rules, regulations that you don't have to create them yourself, I think it is a great idea. Plus, it has, on the civil service site, you do have job descriptions, you do have things that you can jump and leap over, the things that we have to create for ourselves in the township. There is a guideline. The classification of classified, unclassified, provisional appointments, qualifying, etc., is there and available to us, and people that are already hired that have more than 1 year service can be grandfathered in, which I think is a good idea. I have sent over, the contact is Bob Check, Office of Chair and CEO in Trenton, New Jersey. Voorhees does it, Deptford does it, Gloucester County does it, Monroe Township does it, Gloucester Township does it. I think we should take a look at it. Thank you for your time.
Hi, Mary Bem at Dew Court. I just want to come up and say how disappointed I am that it was 3-2 to pass squashing the public coming up and talking. Once again, it's not transparent. You're not letting the people come up and say what they have to say. It might be a little bit inconveniencing of your time to be here a little bit longer to listen to the people, but you are there to serve the people. And I just think it's over and over again. I don't know whether you feel like it's a political thing that 3 of you have to stick together and squash the people of the public, but there is 2 of you up there that care about the people, that what their opinions are, and I think for that, everybody else should be ashamed of themselves. I also don't understand why the attorney is the one coming up with all these decisions when it's the council that's in control, and you're the ones that should be putting this in place, not the attorney. He's supposed to be there to legally help you, but not to tell you what to say and do. So I guess that's I'm nothing against you. You're taking control, but that's not your place. You're supposed to be there as the attorney. So for that, I'm very disappointed. I will say that I came in and I had one of the meetings with the business administrator. It was very productive. The people that came, they gave up their time. I appreciate that. And I thought myself and Chet Nowowski came. I was very appreciative of that. So hopefully we'll get to see a little bit more of the budget, line items by a line item, so we can see a little bit. I've heard people say maybe it should go out to the public for a vote, give or take. But I would like also to know what's going on with the petition that we turned in before, and to hear some information on that. Okay, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Giancarlo Dorazio. I live in Washington Township. I'd like to make a comment on time limit on public speaking. That there are 2 different ones. One is when an ordinance is open to the public, and if you do put that restriction on time limits, it may be a good idea for you to advertise on the newspaper. When you put the advertisement on the newspaper, to include a time limit. Because the perception is that you don't want to hear from the public when you invite them over and you give them a time limit when they get here. So by place that on the advertisement, it may help the people to come here. In addition to that, if you did research on time limit on an ordinance that works out, it would be great to give it to the public on how many municipalities we have in the state of New Jersey, how many of them have time limits on ordinances, and if they do work for them or not. That would be helpful to know. When it comes to the public sessions such as this one, that we can talk about anything we want. In a case where when you go to a closed sessions, the public doesn't have a choice. We'll wait for you regardless how much time you take. But when it's time for the public to speak, we have that time limit, but yet we could come back multiple times. It doesn't save any time at all. Because that we could come back as many times as we want. So the only thing that accomplished is that it loses the contents of what we're trying to say here. My recommendation on that is, instead of putting a time limit, do like a baseball game rather than a football game. Put a limit on the contents of the argument rather than the time itself. If someone is repeating the same thing over and over again, you can ask them to wrap it up. But if it is about the same subject and the person is not done talking, it may be beneficial to the rest of the people as well. Because when we come here, it's not only to engage with you on what we care about, but we also want to hear the rest of the public. And we may be interested in that. On the second subject, I read an article last week regarding a lawsuit about a police officer receiving $35,000. I believe that was a settlement that was done in closed sessions. The article itself does not mention how much money was spent on legal fees. If you have that figure, I would like to know. In addition to that, if the minutes are available of that closed session, now that the case is over, is that available on the website, or is that available by request? Is that through an open request, or is it just open to the public as anything at all? Thank you.
Good evening, Ginny Murphy, 53 Golan Parkway. I had a question about ordinance 008-2017, the ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limit and to establish a cap bank. Mr. Smith and I went round and round on this. I don't know if it was last year or the year before, because it's something that I think you guys do annually. So on the municipal cap, there is exceptions to that cap. I believe there's maybe 4 or 5 things that fall outside of your 2% cap. Is this ordinance to exceed the municipal cap in excess of the exceptions to the 2% cap? And in the years that we have done this as a precaution, in the event of something happening catastrophic that didn't fall within one of the areas of the exceptions to the cap, have we ever spent what is the percentage that you're looking to approve, and have we in the past used any of that percentage? So that's my question tonight. Just as maybe a word of wisdom with respect to this new public comment program you have, it really gets confusing if you're not going to answer the public's questions after each person asks the question. And when the school board does it, you come up, you ask a question. If people are watching at home, 25 minutes in, they have no idea what the original questions were. So it kind of we do it that way. Ask a question, you're done speaking, answer the question, move on to the next person. Thank you.
Did you want to speak, sir? Daniel Coughlin, River Birch Road, Turnersville. So let me just, I guess you can't answer my question, but I wanted to just get it clear. Each person has 1 5-minute opportunity to address council during the public portion session, right? You can nod heads, right? You can nod the head. Okay. Yeah, I definitely agree with previous speakers that you should allow multiple opportunities. And just as Council Member Pasqualone said, control people that talk repetitively. You already had, that's an option for the chair to gavel down. I understand. You don't want to cut off information. That's what's great about information. You don't have to take any of our advice from the public. But you don't want to cut off something that they may make a good point that you didn't think about. You don't have to agree with one thing that's said by the public, but you don't want to limit that opportunity. And a lot of times I think what has happened is that there's some, heated meetings with a lot of personal attacks. And, I admit it must be hard at times sitting in that chair. And again, you don't have to allow personal attacks. Again, they should be gabbled down. But you should be giving people the opportunity to address council and to share their concerns. Democracy is messy. And democracy, we came about because it's a lot better to hear people's opinions than they start throwing rocks. And that's why democracy created, freedom of speech. Because in the end, it's much better to listen to people's complaints than to deal with them in another way. And I'm just talking about the history of our country and democracy as a whole, and not making any intimidating statements or anything like that. Now, as regard our budget, I would like to know. I was very encouraged. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council, for your efforts to keep property taxes down. Thank you very much. I know you work hard at that, and I appreciate that. I'd like to know, and we had a healthy surplus, and I was encouraged to hear the surplus. One thing I'd like to know is, because we had a mild winter, how much does like an average snowstorm cost the township in snow removal? Like one good snow snowstorm, what would that cost us? What is our annual debt service? And what is our current credit rating? They would be questions I would be interested in hearing. Now, also, a couple meetings ago, there were some allegations made about some improprieties of our business administrator, and this is not certainly our current business administrator. So my question is, does the business administrator have the authority to sign his own checks? Because sort of that's what maybe wasn't not necessarily implied, but I don't want to get into, I know we can't discuss details, that's under litigation. But just in general, does the business administrator have the authority to sign his own checks? I would hope not. We should have some checks and balances. We probably do. I'm just clarifying. Now, I know we have a lot of lawsuits. We've had a lot of lawsuits from employees and former employees that have sued this town. Obviously, we can't control somebody's First Amendment right to sue, right? But I would hope that we would have employee trainings in place. Like, I'm a state worker. I have to every year, I'm sure Mr. Longfellow too, anybody who's employed in big firms, you have to complete these mandatory trainings year in, preventing discrimination in the workplace, safety and security, there's various ones, but they go over the details, and every year you have to do them. I would hope our town would have that in place. Refresher courses. I know it doesn't stop all the shenanigans, and everything that can happen in a workplace, but they're good refreshers so that everybody, gets that little friendly reminder of what's appropriate conduct in the workplace. And maybe you do. Again, I'm just clarifying. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Good evening, Frank Cianci, Twin Ponds. One question, two comments. The first question I have is, and he stole some of my thunder, the previous business administrator, is there any update? What's happening? Is it going to litigation? The taxpayers getting their money back? What the story is on that? And the comments I have is, one is also a follow-up ethics training and stuff like that. Maybe the township can do that. As being a state worker, we go through it every year. Refresh everybody about discrimination and different things you have to do, so you don't have these lawsuits. I don't think there have been any this year. I haven't heard of any new lawsuits, so that's kind of good. And the other comment I have is, Mayor, I want to thank you holding the line on taxes. It was one of your campaign promises, and it seems like you're keeping it, so it's very refreshing. I just hope that the other taxing entities in Washington Township can do the same for the residents and taxpayers. Thank you.
Anyone else from the public? Seeing none, motion to close.
Make that motion.
I'll second. All in favor?
Aye. Any nays? Motion passes.
All right, start answering questions. We'll start with Jerry Keir. I believe he was the first resident to come up. Where do we stand on the petition for the salary ordinance? Leo, I'm going to pass that to you. I don't have any word yet, and I'm, say what you've been telling me. That's all.
We are going forward in the process, and it will take as much time as it takes. We're moving forward.
And Stagecoach start date. And
the extent of the paving, unless anybody knows, I think that's a question that we can have Anina answer and provide it to Mr. Keir.
Frank, if you'd like to make a comment.
Oh, Frank.
As far as the Stagecoach, yeah, obviously now that it's awarded, it's going from Johnson Road to Lillian Avenue, and it's as far as scheduling with the contract with South State. So it's a matter of timing.
Okay, so soon, if anything.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, move on to the next resident, Bob Alvarez. He had a question about bank cap, and just a quick explanation, I think, Jim, if you could give us one real quick, would do.
Hello, Council. Each year, the Township has introduced and adopted an ordinance to exceed the municipal budget appropriations limit and to establish a cap bank.
Speak a little closer to the mic, Jim.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's much
Okay.
better.
Sorry about that. So this year, the state has allowed for a 0.5 increase in the appropriation cap. That being said, they do realize and acknowledge that there's additional percentage needs to be applied just due to the fact of the cost of living. And they decide to raise that to 3.5%. This year, by raising the appropriation cap to 3.5%, it goes to $34.9 million. However, we only used $33.2 million, which left in excess of $1.5 million. In any particular year, if we don't need to use all of the extra appropriation cap, it goes into a bank and it can be used in subsequent years. For example, this year, if we may not need all of that appropriation cap. However, we needed the bank that was set from previous years where we did adopt the COLA ordinance to fill that gap. And that's what it is, because every year the cost of living increases higher than what the state allows, the 0.5. Sometimes it's 0. So they acknowledge that and allow for a township to pass an ordinance to increase that appropriation cap to 3.5%. I hope that explained.
Mr. Alvarez also, Nick asked about the time period for introduction of the budget, and I think he read the statutory limitations of February than March, but I think there was an extension by the governor.
Yeah, each year there is an extension by the governor for the adoption of a budget. There are things that we have to wait from the state for them to approve the budget, specifically state aid. That doesn't come in until after. And accumulating the budget is a long, as the mayor said, it's a long and strenuous process. Department heads need to meet. We need to have public hearings. We need to go through a long process, and sometimes it takes a little longer.
I think Mr. Alvarez also asked for an explanation of caps. He mentioned contracting and procurement in terms of what the mayor referenced, or whether they were talking about the levy cap or the appropriations cap. Did you have an answer for that question?
Yeah, I think Mr. Alvarez, his question had to do with what is an appropriation cap? What are expenses that fall in the appropriation cap? The appropriations that are inside the cap are the appropriations that are directly applied to the tax levy cap. There are appropriations outside the cap that are not calculated into the tax levy cap calculation.
Get everything from Mr. Alvarez?
Whether you're going to go, one of his other questions was whether the budget will be considered as one lump sum, or will the committee go through line by line?
On the date of adoption, we will submit a resolution to have the budget read in title only, which will alleviate the need to go through line item by line item. However, tomorrow morning, the introduced budget will be posted on the website for everybody to look at by line item.
And in addition to that, I know in the past on council, we've all gone over it line by line for the last 2 years, and I'd be more than happy to do that again.
Yeah, we had them, there were open meetings too, weren't they?
Yeah, we did 2 last year. Probably could have done it in 1, but
We can set up a date. We can answer the rest of the questions and we'll come back to it at the end before
Sure.
we close.
Yeah, I met with Jason and Jim on Monday, line by line on the budget, and it was very productive. I felt the meeting.
Thanks. And tomorrow, when the introduced budget is online, you'll be able to see it line item by line item. And in addition to that, you'll be able to see an explanatory message that has the appropriation cap calculation and also the tax levy calculation. It will kind of give you a better idea of the numbers that are exempt. I think somebody was asking about the exempt numbers from the appropriation cap and what is used from previous years and what the cap
I
is
think the
based
council
on.
president's going to go resident by resident, so you may have to come back up.
Okay, it's fine.
Oh, I think,
that
do you have anything else written down for Bob?
Not for Mr.
Alvarez?
Alvarez. We
No.
can go to Mr. DeOrazio's questions.
Well, to comment back to Mary Ben real quick, Mary, Stewart didn't tell us to do anything. This body voted. That's how it works. So he guided us a little bit to make that motion, so, and to help us through that. But as far as, us, we make that decision. So this group right here.
And I'd like to say this is probably the first meeting in 2 months that we haven't had a screaming match too. So to some degree, it's been productive.
And the question about the petition was answered earlier. Can't really comment on it. We don't have any information back yet. Mr. DeOrazio, he wanted to, what was his question?
We wanted the legal fees for the Tarasevich case, so we can provide that through the BA's office.
Okay, I'm sure he'll get right to you there, Mr. DeOrazio. Yeah, and how many times had time limits? So, how many towns had time limits? I don't know.
Most of them.
Yeah, you might know, actually. You're in a couple.
I don't know of any that don't.
Okay.
I think you also asked a question about the release of executive session minutes following the conclusion of the matter that was the result of that. And they certainly would be subject matter of an Oprah request.
There is a process that we would go through, requires a resolution, approval by council, review by legal counsel to make sure that we're only releasing those matters that have been completely resolved. And once that's done, then we do a resolution, and then it would be made available to the public, and the public could then Oprah it. But that would occur at one of our meetings. So if that matter is closed, then perhaps at the next meeting, there could be a resolution after legal counsel reviews it, and then the public could Oprah that one. If there was anything else discussed in that executive session, you would see it as redacted, only that which we could release that was discussed and decided. That's the process.
Is there anything else for Mr. DeOrazio?
I think that's everything.
I believe that's it. Ginny Murphy did have a question, Jim, that you probably can answer to exceed municipal cap. I forget how she worded it.
In the past, have we used the cap?
I guess her first question was, is this an appropriations or I think she mentioned the 2% tax, the levy cap. This is not the cap bank ordinance that was introduced tonight is not a tax levy bank, it's a appropriations bank, correct?
Correct.
And then she asked questions about she understood from prior discussions with the previous business administrator that, in fact, you need this because of unforeseen circumstances, and it's been something that's been done before. I guess she asked, have you ever used those funds for one of those unforeseen circumstances? This administration is new, so we can't answer that question.
It doesn't have to be for an unforeseen circumstance. We have used the funds. This year, for example, we have a bank made up of 2015 and 2016 appropriation cap that carried over from the 2 previous years, and we have used it. We're using it this year. What it's for, it could be used for extraordinary expenses due to some unforeseen event. However, as everyone knows, that prices increase. There is a cost of living adjustment that needs to be done higher than the state allowed 0 or 0.5% in this year. And the state acknowledges that and allows municipalities to increase their appropriation cap up to 3.5%.
Doesn't mean we're necessarily going to use those appropriations, is that correct?
Excuse me?
It doesn't mean we're necessarily going to have to use those appropriations.
It does not mean we necessarily have to use those appropriations.
That's all I have for that particular resident. Did you have anything further?
He wants to know what did we use in the past?
It's hard to get an exact number on the amounts that we used. The calculation is put in totals. For example, in this year's budget, we're using parts of 2015 and 2016's appropriation cap bank, in addition to this year's COLA increase.
That's because you had banked it in prior years, so you can carry it forward to future years like this year.
For 2 years.
Yes.
Tomorrow, when the budget, introduced budget is put onto the website, you can look at I think it's sheet 3B, and 3B will have a detail of the calculation, and I'll be glad to go over it with you at any time. You want to give me a call, and we can go into more detail over it.
Yeah, I know. Moving on to Dan. The cost of the average snowstorm, roughly, how much did you have this year?
It's a hard figure. I did actually speak with Ernie about that a few weeks ago. We were going over it. I'd say probably on average, the two that we had, maybe 50 to 60,000.
They were pretty light, I guess, right? Frank's nodding his head, so.
But if we brought
Is that about right, Frank?
And if we bring the contractors in to remove snow,
And that
it's
includes that.
significantly up, probably like 200? 100? Okay.
I think you also asked a question about annual debt service
Yep.
and the bond rating.
All right, credit rating.
Bond rating's AA2, right?
The annual debt service in this budget year is $2.522 million, and our rating has increased to AA2.
Does the BA sign those check? It's the mayor who signs, right?
No, the BA doesn't, not in 2017.
Uh-huh.
And in the past, we have had EEO classes or ethics classes. I know I've gone to at least one of them here in the municipal building.
K-Park does do them.
Yeah.
We contract them every year.
Yeah, I was going to say with the HR department now, I guess you can kind of schedule your own and find more, if anything, so.
We are in the process of scheduling them.
Yeah.
We're actually doing department quarterly reviews now and putting that in place. We actually have a drug screening and background check process we're putting into place as well.
Great.
And I think that's it for Daniel. Anyone have anything else? You look like you want to say something, no? All right.
Just Frank, where's the ethics training? But you missed that.
And Frank had asked a question about the previous BA and the litigation. Stuart?
No update at this time?
Okay. And a comment about ethics training too, and I think that Jason had answered just previously that they're going to get more involved with it, absolutely. All right.
Council President, I just would, again, on the policy issue in terms of public portion, again, I want to reiterate that there's many ways that people can get information from this town. Jim, I'm going to have to probably give out your home telephone number. I wouldn't do that to you, but I mean, certainly people can email, call. You know, if somebody wants to have a 1 hour or 2 hour conversation about the budget, they can have that. It's not necessarily has to take place at a public meeting. So there are ways to get information beyond just the public portion, beyond just the time period that you discuss the particular budget hearing. So I know that we're available. We've had a number of public budget workshops. I don't know if it's been done here, or if it has been. It hasn't been. It's been a long time. Open public budget hearings is going to be another one. But there are many ways to obtain information. We have a very long list of Oprah requests. Mr. Selb can attest to that. I think our Oprah numbers are higher than our resolution numbers at this point, which is probably not a good sign. And people can obtain information by calling, visiting, making an appointment, emailing. So there are many ways to get information, not necessarily just at a open public meeting. Thank you.
All right, I believe we answered all the residents' questions that we had. We need to set a date for a budget hearing for council. This is where, I remember last time we did it, we went kind of line by line together.
Yeah.
The administration was here as well, and
We'll
it
be here.
gave council the opportunity to ask questions in just a meeting specifically for the budget. I don't believe we had any public session part to that, did we?
There was no one came. There was no public, but we still recorded the whole thing, and
Yeah.
that's available. And we did open to the public. There was just no one
Nobody
here
cared.
to
Yeah, no one
speak.
So basically what this meeting will be is it's going to be open to the public. Council's going to be here. We're only going to be looking at the budget and asking the administration questions and having a conversation. We will open to the public at the end of the meeting. So if you come, you can say something. Same rules apply that they apply here. Let's try and work out a date real quick. I was thinking next Thursday. Does anybody have anything?
20th?
We can do it a little earlier so we're not here as late.
We'll make ourselves available.
And that has to be advertised too?
Yes, sir, it does. Has to be advertised.
So let's say council around 6. Is that too early for some of you guys?
6 works.
It's fine.
6 works, Angela? Okay.
Jim, good for you?
Administration's there? No, Stuart, you don't have to be here. All right.
That's
And I
the
guess
18th.
if anybody,
No.
20th?
The 20th.
Give me a date.
20th.
April 20th at 6 p.m.
Mm-hmm.
about department heads, Nick? Do we
Yeah,
want to
let's work
request
that out,
individual
too.
department
Yeah.
heads?
I
would
think
like
we should
that.
have them. I don't think
Have
that'll
all
be
of
a
them?
problem. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that. I know sometimes in the past, previous
last time-
administrations were a little.
Can we-
They're,
hesitant to
they're
have
open to
them.
speak with you as well prior
Yeah.
to. So if you,
Naturally.
as I put in my email, if you have specific questions and you want to speak with any of them, they're more than available and they've agreed to that.
Great.
And can we coordinate directly with them just because of schedules?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Sure.
Great.
Absolutely.
Oh,
Their
No, I thought
meetings
it was-
at what? 8? 7.
what time's the meeting?
Yeah, it's not, it's the 26th.
26.
Wow. Thursday?
Oh, man. All right. Let's change it. They got it first.
I'll go sooner or later.
Could we,
Do you want to do the Wednesday, the 19th?
Yeah. Yeah, we'll just go Wednesday, 19th.
I caution
can't
you,
do that.
I have to get this into the paper. I can't guarantee, we got to give 48 hours notice. I'm not sure I can get it into the paper to give you that 48 hours notice. The paper's not always cooperative, so
Oh.
push it out further. Don't
Yeah,
come closer.
yeah, I would push it for the week of,
Have it before the council meeting on the 26th
that works.
Depends on how
5?
long you're going to be.
5:30?
at 5 or 5:30?
I can make it here. Can anyone else?
Oh, the 26th I have the BOE budget meeting.
Why is the BOE doing all the stuff that we wanted?
Oh, that's on.
You guys
they
took
meet
all
like
the dates.
35
We could do,
So
Just make sure Jim's available.
we could do 5 o'clock. I just have to go to the other meeting too.
Yeah, that too. We don't know if this room's going to be available.
I don't know, I don't have the schedule in front of me.
Okay, what about the 27th? Thursday.
We can move it to the 27th.
I mean, that's fine.
5, 6? It's your pleasure.
Say 5:30.
5:30.
So, Mr. President, I understand we're going to schedule an open public budget hearing where the committee will go through, and at the end, there'll be a public portion, as usual, at 5:30 on the 27th, here within the building, and we are requesting all department heads to attend as well for explanations if needed. Am I
Except
correct
for
on
me.
that?
Except for me.
Except, and the solicitor's excused.
And this, so it'll be noticed as a special meeting regarding the budget. I also want to remind council that in our form of government, once the mayor presents the budget, as she did tonight, and it's introed and accepted, it's council's budget. So the administration is fully prepared to be here and answer all questions. But now the budget is in your hands, and really the discussion really needs to be amongst and by and between council at this point on the budget itself. We certainly can answer questions. Jim can be here to answer any procedural issues and overall budgetary policies. But again, it's in council's hands at this time.
Mention the voting to increase 4 to 5 votes.
Yeah, well, if you do a line item, if you want to decrease a particular line item, you need a simple majority. If you want to increase a line item, and I'm not sure that would be the case, but if you did, you'd need 4 out of 5 votes, supermajority, which Nick certainly is aware of that, so. So we have a special meeting 5:30 on the 27th?
That's what I have listed, sir.
Okay.
And you'll
We have a
notice.
Motion or vote on it, or?
Yep.
We have a motion?
Make that motion.
Second.
Second.
You second?
And roll call.
Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Mr. Pasqualone? Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
Motion passes to have a meeting on the 27th at 5:30 PM. It'll be a special meeting that'll be advertised for the budget, and it will be open for the public with a public session at the end of that meeting with department heads present.
All right. Do we have a motion to close?
I'll make that motion.
Is that a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
Adjourn.
Ms. Pasqualone made the motion.
That too.
Second.
Mr. Longfellow, second. Ms. Donato?
Yes.
Mr. Longfellow?
Yes.
Ms. Pasqualone?
Yes.
Mr. Perry?
Yes.
Mr. Fazio?
Yes.
We are adjourned at 9:15.
Next council meeting is the 26th.
The next council meeting is April 26, 2017 at 7 o'clock.